Don't settle for bad socks. Get comfort and grip at an affordable price with Pure Grip Socks Pro. Choose from 18 different colors at puregripsocks.com.
I don't love a lot about these football boots, but man are they pretty. Special edition Puma box, which at this point doesn't really mean all that much given that over half of Puma's releases this year seem to have been special edition. Open it up and they do include this little piece of paper, kind of giving you a brief rundown of the history of the Puma King. Unfortunately, no string bag included with this pair, but inside the box you get what I think is one of the best looking boots to release in 2023, which I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me on, but it is the limited edition Art of Football collaboration Puma King Ultimate, which as you can see has some nods to classic Puma Kings in regards to the styling and some of the stitching on what is still ultimately a synthetic K-Better upper, which to a lot of people, including myself, is a bit of a sin, where just like the Nike Tiempo Legend 10, Puma is making promises of kangaroo leather feel from a full synthetic upper, and in reality that is definitely not the case. If you want the best kangaroo leather football boot experience, buying one actually made from that material is still the way to go. With that in mind, what's on offer here from the Puma King Platinum is still something that I think has some appeal depending on what you're looking for, particularly if you used to be a fan of the Tahitian synthetic days of the Nike Mercurial series. This K-Better synthetic feels very similar to that, with this limited edition version of the King Ultimate bearing a retail price of $220, which is $20 more than a normal King colorway, but even at $220, they're less expensive than most top-end options. But of course, you don't have to pay full retail. If you are interested in a pair for yourself, you can pick them up below their normal retail price by way of some exclusive SR4U coupon codes via the first link down below. From a details perspective, the whole point of this particular release is to pay tribute to what ultimately is one of the more iconic football boots of all time in the Puma King series. Obviously, in recent years, aside from the couple weeks of Neymar hype that we had a few years ago, this hasn't been a particularly relevant football boot in terms of what has been trending over the last 10 years, so much so that Puma have more or less kind of killed off the King line multiple times over the last 15 years or so. However, this year it seems like they're trying to make a big push again. Whether or not it's going to be successful with the full synthetic upper, that remains to be seen. However, despite its kangaroo leatherless construction, Puma have given this K-Better synthetic a very convincing leather grain finish on the surface of the material that, especially from a distance, would fool a lot of people. Of course, as a tribute to classic Puma King models, they have added the stitching here in the forefoot in that kind of Puma King specific pattern. Ultimately, it has no impact on performance on a leather boot. It was there to reinforce it, to make it not stretch quite as much. Here it's purely for aesthetic, and the same thing goes for the heavy stitching that you're going to find on the form stripe here on the lateral side. The Art of Football acronym has been incorporated in what is kind of like a gold stamping here in the shape of the classic Puma King logo. You're going to find the classic Puma logo itself in an oval on the back of the heel. Significant years to the Puma King series listed here on the top side of the medial form stripe, and of course the King as well as Art of Football logos on the front side of the tongue. With the coolest details unfortunately being ones that most people will never get to see, and that is in the insoles themselves, where you can see the left insole starts the timeline of the Puma King series, with the right insole completing it, with the tagline of "Some Kings are born and some kings are made" being highlighted here with the "Insert King Here" circle you'll find on the heel of the right insole. I know in 2023 most people aren't going to be excited about what look to be very plain black and white football boots, but if you're a bit of a boot history nerd, there are so many cool details to these. As for the performance side of things, I'll go over the highlights and lowlights of the King Ultimate, but if you are looking for more specific information on how these fit, feel, and perform, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen to my full detailed review. Nonetheless, the main highlight, at least according to Puma, is that K-Better synthetic upper, which of course replaces the traditional kangaroo leather material you'd expect to find on a top-end Puma King for what is full synthetic. And while it might appear to be leather-like, it's actually very thin. I don't think it's quite as soft as a pair of natural kangaroo leather football boots would be, and the inside lining material is actually on the firmer side and does have that kind of raw, synthetic, almost plasticky sensation to it. So while it does have good overall pliability, if you're looking for that soft cushion touch on the ball, you're not necessarily going to get it from these. However, what you do get, and part of the reason why I related these back to the Teijin synthetic days of the Nike Mercurial series, is a material that feels very much like just that, thin Teijin synthetic, where if you want that raw, pingy, barefoot sensation without being paper thin, borderline see-through like we're seeing from so many modern day speed boots, that's exactly what's on offer with this King Ultimate. Ultimately in a form factor and shaping that's actually not too far off those old school Mercurials as well. I think most people associate the Puma King name and aesthetic to a football boot that feels very old school, but that could not be further from the truth when it comes to the latest generation of the Puma King. This fits your foot and wraps your foot like a modern day speed boot, which again kind of makes it a little bit disappointing as a Puma King model, but if you consider this as more of a speed boot, then I think they've actually done something pretty good here. Like so many football boots these days, you do of course maintain a one-piece upper construction, a nice deep central lacing system, the central portion of the upper being filled in with an elasticated knit, and of course a low cut design, with the main gripe that I have with this boot being the heel in particular, and that I just don't find it to be quite as comfortable as some of the other top end options out there. If we're comparing this directly to something like a Nike Tiempo Legend 10 Elite, which perhaps that can be a future comparison video, let me know if you want to see that down below in the comment section, but just comparing the overall comfort in the back portion of the boot with these to the Tiempos, I don't think it's even close, at least for my foot specifically. Obviously, your experience may vary depending on the shape of your feet, but I just wish the heel liner itself would have been shaped a little bit differently and perhaps maybe even offered a little bit more padding. But as far as materials used is concerned, I think it feels quite nice. Where the base of the King Ultimate is pretty straightforward. You do of course get that external heel counter, which I'm personally a fan of, but as far as the materials used is concerned, it's a standard plastic that has a more flexible feel. It's not particularly lightweight, which I think is a little bit disappointing given the very low profile and kind of slim fitting design that they've gone for. I would just expect them to be a little bit lighter than they are. And it's not to say that they're heavy, but again, in comparison to the Tiempos, those are going to be noticeably lighter. And then as far as the stud pattern is concerned, they've gone very traditional, no nonsense, conical studs all the way through, which again has that kind of old school appearance that a lot of people associate with poor performance. But in reality, especially because of the narrow profile of these studs, they dig into the ground quite nicely, provide plenty of bite, and because they're round in shape, you still have that freedom to twist and pivot. So of course, they're not going to be as aggressive as some of the crazy bladed stud patterns you're going to find on a lot of speed boots, but by no means is this a bad stud pattern when it comes to overall performance. On feet, I absolutely love the way that these look. Unfortunately, I'm not as in love with the way that they fit and feel. Although, depending on your personal preferences, you might have the exact opposite opinion. The only thing to note with this particular colorway compared to other King Ultimates is that all the stitching that you have that is special to this limited edition release, mainly the one on the lateral form stripe as well as in the toe box, does go all the way through the upper, and you can feel it on the inside of the football boot when you run your fingers along. However, when you have socks on, it's not noticeable whatsoever. So I was a little bit concerned with that stitching maybe being uncomfortable, but it doesn't seem to be an issue whatsoever. From a fit and feel perspective, obviously it's a very tight wrap. Like I said, a lot of people will associate the Puma King name to kind of a chunkier old school style of football boot. This feels as speed boot-like as you could possibly get in regards to how tight it wraps your foot, as well as the overall structure of the upper. This feels nothing like kangaroo leather. It feels a lot like thin Teijin synthetic. So if you want that kind of barefoot feel without being too thin, that's exactly what you're getting here from this K-Better material. From a shaping perspective, again, very Mercurial-esque. It's actually reminiscent to the original Puma King Platinum that came out in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, but obviously minus the kangaroo leather. So if you want that kind of one-to-one wrap around your foot, you're definitely getting it here. Although do keep in mind that because of this shaping, the boots as a whole are not overly wide. They will work for most people if you like that tight fit, but if you have extremely wide feet, probably not the best option for you. The one complaint that I will have in regards to the overall shaping of this boot is the heel. Like I mentioned earlier, it's just not very contoured. It's kind of a straight up and down shape, which I personally find to be a little bit uncomfortable, kind of on the upper part of the back of my heel, which isn't really a huge issue. You do get used to it and the boots do break in nicely, but out of the box, I don't think the comfort from the heel in particular is quite as good as other models. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I'm wearing these in my usual size 9.5 US, and they do fit, although they're definitely on the snug side. If you like that really tight fit, true to size should work out just fine. Whereas if you don't want your boots to be overly tight, just because of the shaping alone, you can get away with going half a size up. But like I said, for most people, true to size should be perfect. And there you have it, the limited edition Art of Football Puma King Ultimates. Let me know your thoughts on them down below in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.